Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Melissa Tumblin, and I'm the founder and executive director of the EAR Community Organization. And we're going to begin hosting a series of sessions where we have a chance to speak with our community members about, having microtia and atresia, some of the things that they've experienced through life, and a lot of things that have really helped them cope and just finding their way. And tonight, our session is we're going to have a great talk with two amazing men who I've had the opportunity to get to know over the years. So this is a session about the guys sharing with all of us what it's like to live with microtia and atresia. And we're just really excited to have everyone join us tonight. And we're looking forward to hearing from Will and Kole. And so I'll go ahead and share how our session will begin. So Will and Kole, I'm going to basically ask you to introduce yourself. And then I have a series of questions that I will ask each of you. And then we'll have an open discussion where others can share or ask questions in the chat. And it's just a nice open talk. And so we're excited to just learn from your experiences, really. There are parents on. A lot of us always wonder, what will our kids go through? What will our kids experience? And there are plenty of adults and some teen boys on as well. Just wondering, how you guys have coped over the years and what did you do that helped make things better, thinking back to their age. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce Will Sinnott first. I have known Will for the past 5 or 6 years. We met at the Vanderbilt event.
2018, 19, something like that.
Yeah. And Will showed up with his dad because you were in search of better hearing, from what I remember. And I would just love for you to just introduce yourself, share about yourself, and tell us how old you are.
Okay. My name is Will. I am 45 years old. I was born with bilateral microtia and atresia. I've worn a variety of hearing aids growing up. I'm in the Baltimore area, so I was lucky enough to be near Hopkins growing up and was able to get a lot of good medical care thanks to my parents and finding the right people. I currently wear a cochlear Baja 5 because the technology, I use that loosely, that I was wearing was kind of antiquated, and I needed to find something more modern. And I had found Ear Community online when I was trying to find out what else was out there for me, and ended up at the picnic at Nashville in 2018. It was my dad and I came down and looked everything over, and then later that year I got my abutment, and then at the beginning of 2019 was when I got my processor, and I've loved it ever since.
Great. I'm so happy that you're able to find new information that could help you at our events and meet others just like you. I forgot, had you met someone else with microtia before our event?
Oh, well, as a kid, I mean, really sporadically throughout life had I seen other kids or people like me. Now, as I said, I'm 45. We didn't have Facebook in the 80s and 90s, so the world wasn't as small as it is now, and it was awesome to be able to find Facebook groups online and get more information and finally meet a lot more people like me. It was really cool.
Great. Thank you, Will. All right, now I'd like to introduce Kole. So Kole, I feel like I've known you longer, Kole, because of your mom. Kole's mom found me years ago, and we as parents would compare stories, and I actually learned a lot from your mom. Kole, and your experience. And Kole, too, has been a part of our Vanderbilt event. And he's a musician, singer, songwriter, educator. And just tell us, a little bit about yourself and your age.
Sure. So my name is Cole Shuda. I am 26, and I have what I would say is kind of your standard what would be considered stage three unilateral microtia atresia on my right side, as pretty much most of the cases tend to be for unilateral. Um, and I have a Baja cochlear that I received in 2020, and that was just like Will's case. I was able to try on some of the units and just kind of see how it was. Most of them were either ones that I could hold up and test out at the Vanderbilt Ear Community event in 2018, and some of them were on just the bands that you could wear as well. And really, before that point, I had not. Because I was trying to think about this earlier, I really hadn't had anything of any sort of technology of any kind that allowed me to listen to music or listen to anything of like my live environment in stereo. And so that was the first time hearing in stereo for me. And I know my case is definitely, of course, different since I am able to hear on my left side still. But that was a huge difference for me. And just kind of looking back, just thinking about times whether I was in school or whether I was doing all my music related activities, like that, I feel like, just looking back how much of a difference just that experience was. And so pretty much at that point, I knew, okay, I have to do something about this because one, for my music, my involvement as a musician, but also just in my career, I want to be able to have this if at all possible. And so, fortunately enough, over the next year or so, I was able to get my abutment and then get my cochlear, and that's been played a huge role. And up until that, I had spent over 20 years of my life just going through just being able to hear on my left side, and that just was a huge game changer for me. And then I met Will at the event, and it was super cool just to see a lot of people together in one place, and we could share experiences and different stories. And I remember he had some of the different things that he had used early on with him, just like some of the technology that he had used to help aid his hearing. And I thought that was really cool to see and kind of talk about. And yeah, so I think that it's really great that we have ear community. I know that if I remember correctly, Melissa, were you kind of, because when I was really little, I know that we had my mom and you were in communication, but was that really a fully realized thing at that point when I was
Kim may have met me when I had just started our support group on
okay?
Facebook. And
Okay,
then
that
2 years later was when we turned into a nonprofit.
sure.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, but
Okay, well, great.
yeah,
Well, also, I wanted to mention too, we have a lot of families that wonder, and even as individuals, what will my life be like? Will I be married someday? And I just wanted to share that Will has been married and Kole is married. So a lot of times our individuals with microtia and atresia in our community, it can be tough dating and trying to figure out where you're going to be in life. And so these two young men, they have lives of their own, and they're married. So I wanted to start our series of questions. So the first one, Will, I'll start with you. So can you tell me, was there a time in your life that you definitely remember that traumatized you with your microtia and atresia? Something that happened that you remember?
I definitely can. I would say I was lucky enough. I know this is about bullying. Amazingly enough, I didn't get a lot of it from kids. I guess I just was lucky enough to have a lot of good kids around me. Some friends I have known from the third grade are still my buddies. And they've never, we've talked about, but there was never any being made fun of that I can remember as a kid. I'm sure it probably happened somewhere, but I would mostly get it from adults when I was out in public, like what's wrong with him, or Cole had mentioned I showed off my technology at picnics, and I had the one type of hearing aid. Well, both of them were like a headband type thing that girls wear to pull their hair back, and so I would get mistaken for as a girl when I was a kid. But I do remember the one instance that really bothered me was second grade. In our probably different school systems have done it too. We would have this puppet show called Kids on the Block or something come and visit, and they would talk about kids that had differences. And like the day before, the our second grade teacher had mentioned, oh, we have these handicapped kids in our class, and had mentioned me. And my parents had never treated me that way. I had never been called handicapped before, and really upset me. I remember going home and like talking to my mom about it. Like it really, I had never been treated as disabled. Like I say, luckily I had a hearing aid from 4 months old, and so I essentially grew up hearing. So that's the one instance that has always just stuck in my head.
Thank you. I'm sorry that happened. But look at you today. I think you're amazing.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes people aren't always great with their choice of words,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
labels.
No, I understood that. Actually, because one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about ourselves, I had rib graft surgery when I was 12, back in 1990. Um, so that summer, that was a lot of sticking out in public too, because my head was just totally wrapped like gauze all over the place. So there was I remember going to the video store and stuff, and some lady, oh, what happened to you? What's wrong with you? Like, it's not really any of your business.
Of course,
so,
yes.
so
And that's both ears, correct?
yes, yeah.
Bilateral microtia and atresia.
I had rib graft on both sides in 1990.
Yeah. All right, and Cole, thank you, Will.
Hmm?
Cole, so again, share a moment with us that you definitely remember, if you had one, that you found very traumatizing, just because of having microtia and atresia.
Well, there are a couple things that I remember. One, I feel like I remember specifically from my point of view less, but I mean, I remember bits and pieces, but I also kind of have put it together via my mom. And I can't remember where we were. Luckily, I would say, like what Will said, a lot of my friends growing up that I had in school, or neighbors, for the most part, I mean, I guess there's some things that maybe we just kind of push off, or kind of block out, I guess, here and there. But I would say for the most part, I was treated relatively normal, but or it wouldn't have been pointed out quite as much. But what that caused was when someone pointed something out, whether it was another kid, even just them being curious, that made it stand out more, because normally I didn't get that, and so those really, really stand out. Um, So so I was with my mom. I think it might have been just us, and we were in I can't remember what store it would have been, but there was some other kids, and I don't know if their parents were involved or what it was, but they were basically just like, oh, look at that kid. He doesn't have an ear. He like literally doesn't have an ear. Like come over here. Like look at this kid. And so my mom, like, I didn't really know what was going on. I was young enough to where I didn't fully connect, and there was like a tent display up in that store, and she's like, "Oh, come on over here, and let's go like camping." And so we went in the tent, and then they came around, and they're like, "Where did they go?" And so we were just I had no idea. Luckily it was something that happened when I was young enough, and my mom was aware enough that she was able to deal with it. But of course, as any parent, I'm sure, in that situation, would either say something or do something, whatever you could, to avoid that. Because it's kind of just, it's like, why would you have the audacity to just, um, point that out. I mean, other kids my age when I was younger, that's one thing, but I do recall there being some comments from other adults, and also when I would get older too. One other example, when I was a little bit older, but I was still a kid, at school. I think I might have been in maybe first or second grade. Um, but there was one of my classmates. He would literally, so when I had stage three, so it was literally just my lobe on this side. I forgot to mention is that I got reconstructive surgery on my right side and a rib graft. Um, and but before that, one of my classmates would literally come up and he would like flick my ear, like, and he would keep doing it even when I would tell him to stop. um, and it was more so just like annoying than anything. But we ended up actually staying friends. Like as we got older, we went to high school together. But just little things like that, that it's kind of just I tried to sort of make sense of that. But it was nice because there got to points where from that I was able to, even if something was just verbal, I was able to just kind of stand up for myself and just say, I don't really feel comfortable about talking like this. Can we just change the subject? Because it's not really anything that there's not really anything I can do about it. Because I remember talking to a friend of mine once, and they mentioned that if there's something that you see of someone else, unless it's something they can fix in like 30 seconds, like maybe they got like something in their teeth, and the person, you're like, hey, like, you probably shouldn't say anything, and it's just kind of, but that's going to happen, no matter what. And then no specific examples about this, but the only other thing I wanted to mention is I was kind of surprised as I got older, that people who were my peers or just other adults, once I became like an older teenager, young adult, I was kind of surprised, that there's still going to be from time to time not just curious questions, but there still just will be like kind of stares or comments here and there. And I feel like that's kind of where it can be divisive because psychologically, like, other people can just kind of get digs in more. So that was kind of interesting. Both happening as a kid, but also as an adult, where you kind of think that would be over. But I typically just use that as a just as a moment where I can, just kind of share if I feel that it's warranted. Otherwise, just being able to say, I don't really find that comfortable. Like, I mean, I like what Will mentioned with because I had a lot of bandaging when I had the graft taken from the back of my head and they took the skin. Just things like that where it's really just not anybody else's business, honestly, especially if they're not just wanting more information and just generally curious. You can kind of tell by the tone. So, but yeah, those are some examples for sure.
Thank you, Kole. Yeah. I think most people, I agree, you can definitely tell a tone difference with negativity and rudeness versus genuine curiosity. And like I said, sometimes words don't always leave people's mouths in a great way. But if you know them, you can maybe realize that they're really just genuinely curious. It's interesting that you guys had difficulties more with the older or adult crowd than the children. Honestly, that's been our situation as well. So from a parent perspective, Allie is now 13, but I remember when she was 5, she was over at a neighbor's house. And she was playing with the neighbor kids, and there were some other adults over there. And I wasn't there, but she suddenly showed up on the front doorstep crying. And I opened the door, and another mom had been running close behind her and told me that one of the other parents asked, "What's wrong with that little girl's ear?" And so Allie heard this, and she cried, and she ran across the street without looking. And she was sat in the backyard on our deck bench, and she sobbed. She cried. That was the first time I really saw her hurt, and it hurt me as mom. And yeah, that comment came from an adult. So it's tough. And also as parents, we can never walk in your shoes. Parents' worst fear is for our children to be hurt, to be teased, bullied, but we can truly never understand what you go through as an individual with microtia and atresia. And, we can help with advocacy and education and be there for you. But thank you. Thank you for sharing those experiences with us, because a lot of families are curious, what will our children go through? Even as an adult, what are you going to continue experiencing, even in public? So our next question is, and again, Will, and we'll start with you.
Okay.
When do you think there was a point in your life when you finally accepted microtia and atresia more, or maybe just didn't worry about it so much, say, versus a child and fitting in and, what somebody's going to say to you? When was that point in your life?
I can actually point to 2 things. And I feel bad. I'm going to feel like I'm going to say it's kind of later in life. One, when I got married, probably met when I had met my wife. I think a lot of issues I've had with microtia and atresia and wearing a hearing aid have probably been maybe self-made in my head. Like I said, I haven't been bullied by kids and stuff. It was almost like, we don't talk about guys have body issues too. And things I've done, like when I had my rib graft, I was going to be a teenager. It was girls were on my radar. I was trying to be more normal looking or whatever. So when I got married in my early 30s was an instance, and then now again later in life, once I got the Baja, it has really changed my life. I heard well before, but now I really hear well, and I worked at a comic book store for a short time, and I actually started seeing kids beyond your community. I started meeting people, parents with their kids. That we had one of our customers had microtia, and they were amazed to meet another adult, and so I would get questions there and was able to help people. So it's made me very. I think it's just cool. I'm unfortunately divorced now, so I'm doing the dating app thing, and I like kind of. That's one of my things I joke about. Like I'm half a cyborg. So I as an adult, it gets better. It gets better each year growing older. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Kole, when do you think this moment happened for you, when it just wasn't something that is constantly on your mind every day that you're worrying about, where you just finally had a little bit more acceptance with yourself?
Yeah. I think that there was a point when I got just I feel like over time, I mean, like what Will said, I think over time you just grow more comfortable with yourself, and that's going to be very much heightened during your kind of your adolescent, like teenage years, because you're already dealing with a lot, and then just having something else on top of that is pretty crazy. And so I think once I got out of that, time, then I felt like it was easier to manage. So that's kind of more of a simple example, but I did feel a drastic change there. But another thing would be is I would definitely say, and I know this is for sure different for everybody, and another reason why reconstruction versus doing it versus not doing it is a big kind of toss up for a lot of people, and there's a lot of weighing options. But I will say that once I did that, um, well, I guess, well, here the other funny thing is, so once I completed most of my major surgeries, because I had jaw distraction surgery, as well as my reconstruction surgery on my right side, and maybe it was partially just finally getting all of that done with that might have contributed to the relief, but I do feel that some of it was, helped from that, and it's not even so much that I was maybe at the beginning I was like, oh, maybe I won't get as many comments from people or what have you. But really, I would say most of it after I got all my reconstructive surgeries, I was more comfortable with just with like how I was. I mean, I really didn't care all that much, but it just, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't be really being fully truthful if I didn't say that helped to some degree because even functionality, like the functionality of being able to have a symmetric ear on that side, that's even like, I mean, sunglasses, headgear, and then that's for me, I mean, other people may just, feel like they don't care either way. But just speaking from my own experience, I feel like that helped to some degree. And then the other stage was actually getting my Baja, and that was probably even two times as big. Like I didn't think anything else would really knock that out of the water, but this for sure did because being a musician and just the impact that makes just in my general life, and I know you mentioned the married side of things too. You know, it helps with just overall communication in my job, and then makes me hopefully a better listener too in that regard. So, but just everything down to even just little things in daily life. It just makes me less concerned and less anxious about that because having to have someone else repeat themselves, whether it's a family member like my wife or a friend, colleague, what have you. I didn't ever realize how much that would change things for me. So it's pretty crazy.
Aw. Well, thank you, Kole. Um, and again, as a parent of a younger child right now, Allie is 13, and we're still on this journey. You guys are so much further ahead of us, and we definitely talk about her ear, but we're not at the point yet of making any decisions. She actually did used to wear a ponytail. She now wears her hair down more. But we're also in middle school. So I think Allie is focused on trying to fit in more and just find herself, So the journey is always changing. And I agree with both of you that the further along your journey is when, it takes time to figure out who you are as a person and also decide each day, is this going to be about my microtia and atresia, or am I just going to be myself and, be with my friends and do what I want to do in life? So thank you. Thank you for sharing
And
that. Mhm.
and that's accurate. One thing, as when I was in college, I had hair down to my shoulders to kind of try to cover everything up. I still wish I had hair down to my shoulders, but but now I but now I'm the Baja has been such a world opening thing to me that now I was like, I'm shaving it all off now. Like I kind of want people to ask me about it. Like I just think everybody should get one with the Bluetooth technology, and we all don't have to hold our phones up to our ears and stuff. So yeah, it's cool.
Well, that brings me to our next question. I'd like to just go ahead and dive in. So hearing loss, we have a number of individuals in the community that have microtia and atresia who, maybe a hearing device wasn't the right thing for them. There can be a stigma involved still today, even though millions of people wear hearing devices. But also a lot of adults have found ways to adjust to their hearing. But it also comes down to how bad your hearing loss is. It depends on which ear you have the hearing loss in, your level of hearing loss, and how your brain is processing your hearing loss every day. Some individuals seem to just cope better. Now, for both of you, you did find that you needed to hear better. So Will, even when you were little, and of course having bilateral microtia and atresia, it sounds like since 4 months of age, your parents were there advocating for you to make
Yep.
sure that you had access to sound, okay?
Yep.
Especially during the critical years of development and your speech and language skills coming in. But how old do you think you were when you realized I need to hear better? Like I need this hearing device. I'm sure it was in school, maybe, you were missing out on some conversation or being called on. When was that for you?
And that's tough because I don't know if I really, like I said, since I've had a hearing aid, since I was bilateral, I had to have something. And the technology in 1978 was, it was a company called Starkey that it was this hard band and it had the sort of the vibrating processor with a cord down to a box that had a AA battery. And then in the fourth grade, like the amazing technology was this box came to about the size of my Baja, but it still had the band with a cord to another piece. So I always thought I heard well. Like I heard enough to participate in, I was mainstreamed in school. I was in all I no special schooling. I had to have speech therapy as a 4 or 5 year old. But I mean, the time when I really knew I had to do something again was when I met you, was when Starkey had said, we're just selling refurbished hearing aids of what you're currently wearing. And I was like, well, this is obviously going away. I have to do something. And I would say the only reason I had never done something Baja or Ponto related was because of the rib graft technology in the 90s. I had so many surgeries. Like it was just, as a kid, it was scary. Um, and I just didn't want to have any more surgeries on my head. And then I was finally like, hey, I got to do it. I have to get the Baja. I had initially looked at Adhere because that came out right when I was starting this journey. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have something I could just stick to my head and no surgeries. And my audiologist let me know that's not going to be powerful enough since you're bilateral. And I was like, all right, I got to bite the bullet, do it. And the surgery is nothing to be scared of. I had to be at the hospital at 6:30 in the morning for a 7:30 surgery, and I was climbing into my own bed at 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's in and out. It's simple. But that's when I got my processor, was when I realized I had been missing out on a lot. At the time, I lived in a row home in Baltimore. Uh, I didn't realize you could always hear the neighbors going up and down their stairs. I was in the bathroom and heard water, and as a homeowner, I thought, what do I have to fix now? Is this the toilet? Is this the sink? I was hearing the water go through the radiators for the first time, and it blew my mind. Like, so even though I thought I had been hearing well, and I was, there was still a whole other world I was missing out on. So, yeah, it's.
And you're happy now
I am.
with
I
hearing.
love it. It
And-
is. It is.
And of course, the technology continues to
Yes,
advance.
yeah.
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 Okay. All right. Well, and also, for so many of us, whether we have hearing loss or not, we're all getting older and we all eventually lose our hearing. So hearing aids are typically in most people's futures. And, talking about surgeries, whether it's reconstructive or whether it's for the bone anchored hearing device, none of these decisions are easy at all for any of us. And sometimes it does take a little time to get there and figure it out. And I know, for example, with Kole, and I'll let him explain this too, but I'm sure that you were adjusting and getting by all those years, Kole, until you realized with your music career that maybe you weren't hearing certain pitches, recording music. And I remember that when you were at the Vanderbilt Ear Community event, that's when you really wanted to start trying on some of these devices. So share with us, if that was about the moment that you realized, I think I need to hear better, or when that moment was for you.
Yeah, when I tried on, because it was a unit. I can't remember which one was the very first one, but it was, I know it was one with the soft band on it. Which alone isn't anywhere near as as near close to the abutment either. And I would say that there were times when I was younger where, like, maybe when I got to when I was developing more friendships, and we had more in-depth conversations. There was certain environments where if there was a lot of sound on one side of me, I found myself, like, just almost to not be mean, like pretending to hear what someone else was saying. So there was a couple situations where I'm like, man, like that's not okay. Like, I shouldn't have to do that. So little things like that along the way that I think, a lot of people, may have experienced something like that. But the biggest change is just going from, what obviously that was all I, had experienced, was just hearing on my left side, and then trying just it on with the soft band just up against my skull. And that was just, I really can't even put it into words, because just like Will was saying, which first of all, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, that was a huge change. I can't even imagine having bilateral, not being able to hear, and then that changed, like that blows my mind even more. But when I put that on, I was like, what is that sound? And I was hearing the cars on the street, like from inside the building, is what I was hearing, and I'd hear all those little sounds around me. And obviously, the whole room was pretty busy with a lot of people talking and going around to the booths, and at that time, I think Noelle, the other musician that was there, she was playing. And so there was obviously a lot going on, so that was kind of overwhelming in its own way. But that was really, really something. And then going from there to actually getting the abutment, and like Will said, the surgery. The only bad thing about the surgery for me was that I was doing it during COVID, And so there was a few extra steps with that because we had to use like this special microbial wash and stuff before we went in. It was a whole thing. But the surgery itself was I was awake for it. I think some people can choose, you know, maybe to go beyond that, but it's not necessary. I was actually talking with the doctor through the whole thing. So, and I actually asked if they could play some music, and so they did. So that was funny. I mean, it was literally like 20 minutes, like not even. Um, and so that was really neat. But then experiencing it when I was actually able to put the unit on, the first sound I heard through it was when I went to see. I went to the otolaryngology at Iowa City, University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, and he put like a pitch, like an electronic, like vibrating pitch for it. Wasn't like the physical one, I don't believe, but he put it up to the abutment, and that was the first thing that I heard through it. So that blew my mind. So it just like kept increasingly getting better, and then finally to wearing the actual Baja unit. And it took some getting used to, that's for sure, because you know, if the I could hear the water running or like the sub pump or what, you know, or whatever in my house, you know, and I'd always think someone was like breaking in or something. So but eventually, you know, it was a life changer, literally for from the music standpoint. um I In terms of panning, I know a good example is the Beatles music does a lot of this where they do really, really cool stuff with panning the guitars like left and right in real time in the song, or all of a sudden something will switch to the right side, and all of a sudden then it'll switch to the left side, or a part will come in the song. Um, and that was just hearing that. Oh, I forgot to mention there's so the brand Aftershocks. If not everybody's familiar with that, that was kind of my pre intro to being able to hear in stereo, and so I could listen to music through those. And basically, it's just bone conduction technology, and so I just, you know, wear them around around my ears, and that was my first taste of hearing in stereo. So I bought those immediately after someone told me about them at the Vanderbilt Ear Community event, and that was like I literally I don't think I ever took them off for like the first week. Like I almost wanted just to sleep in them, and so that was really cool to be able to listen to my mixes, since I mix a lot of my own music and other people's music, and being able to actually hear what's going on in terms of the panning. And then also in my own playing, that made a huge difference as well. When I would play with other musicians, I was actually able to key in even more on things that they were doing, and so my playing just got better. Than it was. And then the other thing that comes to mind, the last thing I want to share is I remember there wasn't a lot of chance to go out and see music in a live setting during COVID, even though I still played music and I tried to surround myself with as much music as possible. But in it would have been, I think, the end of 2020, my cousin got married in Iowa, my cousin Caleb, and we went there. And I remember hearing the musician that was playing the piano. They were like starting to warm up, and I just like stopped what I was doing because I think that was like the first time I had heard the piano in a while, like in an open space, and it was the first time since I had my my cochlear, my Baja. And I just stopped what I was doing, and I think I was talking to one of my family members, and I just completely stopped and just like sat there and just listened. And I don't even know. Like it was like the sound was it was like the fact that the sound actually like enveloped me, and I could hear it at a new level. It was it was fantastic. Like I can't even put it into words, honestly. So um,
Well, thank you, Cole. And you know that's that's been part of your community's mission this whole time, is to hope that everyone just knows their options. You know, sometimes some of these options, they aren't for everyone. Sometimes they don't work out, but I want you, your community wants you to know about them. We want you to know about all the options so that you can make the best decisions. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about your community before we move on to more questions. But your community will be 13 years old next month. And this is Allie, whom I founded your community after. And I think most of our situations were all the same, where, you know, as parents, we couldn't find the answers we were looking for. We didn't know why this happened to our children, you know, thought we did something during our pregnancies as mothers that caused this. And so there's a lot of confusion, hurt, sadness, frustration on so many different levels, even for the parents. And we always just try to do the best we can for our kids. And that's the options. We want you to know your options. So thank you for both of you for being able to try hearing devices and realize that they actually do make a difference in your life. It's so important. And there are families that focus a lot on just the cosmetic part of microtia and atresia. Really, they focus on the reconstructive ear. You know, maybe their kids are hearing okay, maybe they're not. We don't know. As we do know, kids don't share everything with us. But it's also very important to remember about hearing loss. Hearing loss is a part of your everyday life. And if you are struggling, please know there's options to get help. With Ear Community, this is the first parent-driven nonprofit in the world. And like I said, we're 13 years old. And after we went to the doctors and we just couldn't find the answers we were looking for, we didn't even know we didn't have all the answers at the time. I found out later when I went online, and in bits and pieces, I found different information, and I wanted that to be all in one place. And so your community has everything that you pretty much would ever need to know about microtia and atresia. And, you know, quite honestly, your community was born from our support group. We have the largest support group on Facebook called the Microtia and Atresia Support Group. And everyone just had the same questions. I couldn't believe it. Within a year, the group became global, same questions. And then I noticed families were trying to have play dates and get together, and it wasn't always working. People wouldn't show up. And there were just so many questions. And that's when I decided to create your community's website and put all this information out there. And I wish my family had an ear community when Allie was born. I really do. And so we're so proud of everything that your community has been able to do. And I hope everyone knows about our organization. So, you know, we've hosted over 100 events since 2011. Our first one was in Denver. We had 100 people show up, and a surgeon flew in from Texas to be with us. It was amazing. And since then, we never looked back. We've just kept moving forward. We've donated over 150 bone-anchored hearing devices to those in need and who've been denied. We award college scholarships. We've worked on genetics information. So I've worked closely with Vanderbilt, MIT, and Harvard. And we've done genetics research on microtia and atresia, and we have new findings. We were fortunate enough to publish 2 papers last year. So we actually have more detailed information on the actual chromosomes and genes where microtia and craniofacial microsomia can occur. And while there are studies that do point to external environmental factors, such as, like, say, some families used Clomid to get pregnant, you know, some used Accutane for acne, some say they had diabetes at the time, but for the rest of us, we didn't experience any of those. So I wanted to make sure that no other mother would ever blame herself, thinking that she must have done something during her pregnancy to cause her child's ears to be missing. But I also wanted to find answers, the answers that our community was looking for. So I don't want anyone beating themselves up on thinking they did something here. So sometimes things, they just happen. And also, you know, we have a new hearing fund in place called PACS's Ear Fund. This is a new fund that we're able to reimburse audiologists. So oftentimes when individuals go in and try to get a fitting or programming appointment for their bone anchored hearing device, insurers will deny that service. And we want these individuals to hear. We still want audiologists to be able to provide the gift of hearing. And with PACS's Ear Fund, we're able to do that. So we're now able to reimburse audiologists for that fitting and service fee. We're very excited about that, which leads right into Allie's Act. I hope every single one of you knows about Allie's Act here in the United States. Our bill was just reintroduced last week. As soon as I get all the bill numbers in order and the information, I'll be updating everything, but we need everybody's help. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, your teachers, your doctors, your friends. We need them to write to your local congressman in every state, your senators, set up appointments to meet with them, call them and ask them to co-sponsor Allie's Act. What Allie's Act would do for each and every one of us from age birth to 64 is this would give private insurance coverage for bone anchored hearing devices. It's not just that when you're a child, you need to hear, of course, but you need to hear throughout adulthood. You could have a job with one employer one day and have coverage, amazingly. Well, the next day, maybe they'll switch that plan, or maybe you change jobs and now you no longer have coverage again. So Allie's Act would change the law. It would make coverage consistent. It would not only cover the device itself, but it would provide an upgrade every 5 years, okay? It's going to cover one ENT appointment, one audiology appointment, and also the accessories for the devices. And then when you're ready to have surgery, it will cover the cost of surgery, as well as those post-operative care appointments, and provide oral therapy. That would be your choice of speech, cued speech, or ASL, whatever you need to adjust to your new hearing device. So Allie's Act is very important. And again, we need your help. Okay, so if I can just ask everyone to please help us write to your local lawmakers. We need to get this bill passed, and the bill's not going to pass itself unless we get the community involved. Okay. Also, I just want to remind everyone about National Microtia and Atresia Awareness Day. We founded this day in 2016. It's a day to just inform the public, educate, promote, advocacy and awareness. Maybe stop some of those public stares. Maybe the next time someone learns a little bit about Microtia and Atresia on our Awareness Day, they might just say hi to someone who's missing an ear or both ears instead of asking questions or staring. So our Awareness Day is meant to bring everyone together. Medical professionals educate, they share presentations. Like I said, it's a day of education and promoting awareness. So I hope that each one of you joins us every November 9th. I chose the number 9 as the shape of an ear. So I hope that you all embrace our day. It means a lot to so many, bringing schools and teachers and our kids together to just embrace what you have, your uniqueness, and find a way to just accept. So let's see. I think I covered all that for your community. I did put in the chat our links to our support groups and of course how you can always get a hold of me. And please always visit our events tab, our menu tab on our website, so you can see where we're hosting events each summer. So a question again. So for Will and Kole, and then we're going to open it up to everybody. Okay. This is my last question to you guys. It's in 2 parts. So Will, do you feel that your Microtia and atresia got in the way of your life in any way, your career, anything that you want it to be? And second, what would be just a couple of helpful tips or suggestions that you would give parents or other adults in your situation that could maybe just help them just a little bit easier, make it through each day?
I don't think it's really held me back. Like I say, I was integrated into all the classes. I never had to have any special help in school, so my schooling was normal. I've never had to have any special help at jobs or anything. I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I've always, no problems there. I think maybe the only thing that's held me back, again, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is just maybe you're always harder on yourself maybe than society can be. And that's something that's why I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that, the things that, you learn as you get older. It's, you know what, uh, you should go ahead and try that out. Don't hold yourself back to, um, you know, I one actually experience that taught me that as this sounds super silly, but I love professional wrestling. And 5 years ago, they for my 40th birthday, I went to um, wrestling fantasy camp in Las Vegas, and I was just it's something I would have never done. I was just like, I gotta quit holding myself back in life and just try it. And the guy worked around me taking my hearing aid off and communicating with me. So I would say just don't let yourself be held back. My parents never, they didn't hold me back. They expected high grades out of me. They never made excuses. They did. They left decisions up to me. They never pushed for rib graft. Like that was all me. They always said, "You're the one that makes that decision." Um, the only sort of factor into that was the plastic surgeon that we had seen at the time. Was like, well, you kind of got to do it by the time you're 18 because your the cartilage starts solidifying and it's harder to do it then. So, I did it when I was 12, and so that's my parents were always supportive. So, um, what was the second question? I kind of
No,
went up.
just one or two tips that you could share that might help a child or another adult in your same
Well,
situation that got you by easier.
yeah, I think it's just, you're not as different as you think you are. Um, Again, like I said before, I think I've always been harder on myself than anybody else ever has. Maybe, and I don't know why, but that's how it is. And as I've grown older, it's like, you know what? Plenty of people have something going on in their lives that now I just embrace and celebrate it, and I like to show it off, and it's just kind of cool now, I think.
Well, you are a cool guy, Will. I think that's beautiful what you said. Thank you. And, just to say as well, a couple weeks ago, we had a session with the girls on, and girls can be really hard on themselves just naturally. But ultimately, every individual is unique in the way you handle your situations you're in, the way you allow your feelings to either get to you or just keep moving forward and moving past things. So again, these conversations are so valued among so many of our families watching and listening because we worry about our kids and how they're going to react and what are the decisions they're going to ultimately make. So Kole, same questions. So obviously you're a successful, talented musician, audio engineer, everything. Do you feel at all that your microtia and atresia has gotten in the way of what you wanted to do in life? And again, just one helpful tip to share that could maybe help someone the next day.
Really, the way that I look at it is it only gets in the way if I let it get in the way. If I make a reason for that to happen. I feel like there was really times where I was, and that's right there. That's where I totally 100% agree with what Will said. Is at the end of the day, we can definitely be much too hard on ourselves. And so, because I can think of times where I was just really critical of that, like, I won't, I may not be able to do this, but at the same time, I never really, I was always like, well, I'm going to try it, and if for some reason it really, the outcome of that, if it really shows me that, maybe this isn't for me, or I just didn't like the experience because of maybe if that played a factor in it or not. I'm just going to do it. And, just let's see. Like the worst thing that could happen is, that I find out that, it's something that, I just don't enjoy as much maybe as if I, had, normal hearing or, whatever. But that never happened. Like no matter what I did, there was always things that I could do. There was always accommodations even before I, did any surgery related stuff, or had my Baja, it was still completely fine. Um, and as far as advice goes too, um, well, the other thing I wanted to add, before I forget is, and we'll kind of touch on this too, is that everybody has obviously something, everybody has things that make them unique, but everybody has things that they struggle with. And it just so happens that microtia, atresia, and things in that camp, are maybe more noticeable. That's just the reality of it. Um, and I mean, personally, I look at it as, I mean, I'm overwhelmingly an optimist, just by nature, but I feel like it's made me more of an interesting person. Not only like the uniqueness of that, it's just like, wow, like, 1 out of 5,000 people, or whatever the statistic is, or maybe even more, like that side of things. But also, I'm a really big believer in like using humor as an element. My dad was that way, as well. And I would find ways to just kind of like to joke about it too. And that kind of ties into, something that I would say as a piece of advice is, like embrace it, and there can be different ways of embracing that, and just truly being yourself. And the way that I do that is, by implementing some humor in there. And I started doing it at a younger age, and I still do it. Like literally just a few days ago at work, there was a situation where, we were actually, talking about some different things, and someone brought up like their mom or grandma's, that she got new hearing aids, and then someone, asked me, a couple questions, just because they were trying to debate the difference, or kind of compare the difference between that and like my cochlear. And then they asked me a question, and then I said, what was that, like, and then everybody, like, it took a second, but then everybody got a good laugh out of it. And so just little things, like I feel like I've used that a lot. um, just finding ways like that to just embrace that. And maybe the humor element isn't for everybody, but just, knowing that that's just in your case what makes you different. And then also just going through that and being through all the peaks and the valleys, of whatever one decides to do, in their life. That's just going to make you a better person for it, and honestly, in my opinion. So
Oh, thank you, Cole. I think humor does go a long way, and I'm going to ask Steve to share what he put in the chat because I would like that to be heard on our video. It's very funny. You have to find a way to embrace your uniqueness, and you get to do it the way you want to do it. There are individuals that wear prosthetic ears, and they'll take their ear off and go, oh, and mess with people. So, you know, you handle it the way that you want to. And usually when you're in good company, it'll go over very well. So Steve, please share with us the couple of things you put in the chat, because our kids, especially, they want to know, like, how to just, I guess, make it a little bit humorous to get by each day.
Yeah, I would. By the way, my name's Steve. I'm 44. I've been married for 20 years and I have 3 kids. And so I've been using humor from the very beginning, as far back as I can remember. Um, and it just seemed like all the people around me just accepted it. And like I would always come up with the most bizarre, odd stories when someone's like, "Hey, what happened to your ear?" I'd be like, "Oh, like either like I would make up some story about like a fishing accident and like the hook had some sort of germs on it and then it got infected and I had to cut it off, or like my brother burning it on the stove. Like, I know that sometimes it can be traumatic, but I would just kind of get these stories done. And then when I was 16, a friend actually brought it up to me as far as the no fear was like a big brand back then in the 90s. And he's like, dude, you should get a no fear sticker, but just don't put the F on your car. But I was like, oh my, yes, absolutely. And so the first two cars I've had throughout my life had just a gigantic no ear sticker. Um, there's even my brother got me a Van Gogh shirt that said no ear on it. I remember even like visiting like the bookstore at the University of Kansas, and there was a Van Gogh coffee mug, and it was like the disappearing mug. So when it got hot, like the ear would like melt off and like it would disappear and it just go away. And so like that was like a mug that I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I think one of my kids like washed it in the washer and then it just damaged the mug anyways. But yeah, so
Kids.
I do that. And like what you were saying, Cole, as far as the what, like I do this with kids a lot since I've been working in education for about 10 years. They always ask, can you hear out of that ear, Mr. Berglund? What? And I just see how many times I can say what until like, all right, you're messing with this. And like I've gotten I think up to like 8 or 10 before someone's finally like, okay, I'm gonna stop asking. And so that part of it I think is like and even just today, like I started at a new school this week, and like the kids like had the courage, like, Mr. Berglund, please don't be offended. Like what happened to your ear and like that kind of stuff. And so it's like people want to know, but like hearing some of your stories and all that kind of stuff, and it's tough because nobody really knows how to ask or how people are going to respond to it. And so that was always the thing that I also noticed, because I have one ear, I would always look at that's first thing I would do is look at other people's ears. And there'd be coworkers I would have, like I would always have my hair this short and my ears pretty clear to see. And like after maybe like 6 months of working with somebody, like, wait, you have one ear? I didn't even recognize it. And like there's so many people that don't even notice. But then when I'm out in public, my wife will notice people staring at my ear that I don't even recognize. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Like they don't see an ear like that all the time, so I'm not gonna get upset with them for looking at it. It's something different for them and unique for them. So yeah, so I just did that, and it's been just a huge part of my identity. And so humor was always like the number one thing for me with it.
Well, I think those stories are great, Steve. I'd like to share what Allie does. And I'm sure you guys have done this, but when Allie's done listening to me, she will put her finger in her better hearing ear and walk away from me. So she doesn't have to deal with hearing, which I guess is even better than selective hearing. She could just like block me out. But she does that. And then a story for all the twins out there. I've been hearing this a lot, and I think it's hilarious in a good way. If you're a twin and one has microtia and atresia and the other does not, the other twin that does not gets blamed for eating the ear in the womb. So there's a lot of crazy sibling stories out there where they'll be like, oh, my sister ate my ear off. And that's a wower too, to the crowd who's hearing that for the first time, trying to digest what was just said. So, and I'm sure everyone will agree with this, but in the Microtia and atresia community, I hear you guys get some of the best sleep. So you can take your ears off whenever you want, or if you have one ear, you just cover it. Yep. Lay on it on the pillow, and the rest of us have to suffer with alarms going off and people talking. You guys have the luxury of turning over. So it's really all how you look at it, and it's how you choose to deal with it as an individual. And sure, there's not going to be easy days. And as parents, yeah, like I said, we worry a lot about our kids. We may even worry more about you than you do. But it's all just how it's handled, the family and friends that you have to share your lives with, and how you get a chance to just figure out yourself and how you're going to deal with life each day. I would like to ask Ellen a question. Ellen is one of my board members, and she's joining us today. And I love Ellen because she has a wonderfully strong personality that nothing's going to get her upset. And I've always admired that in you, Ellen. I know I could use some of that. A lot of us could use some of your strength. And so could you just share with us a little bit about, you growing up and that it wasn't that big of a deal, for you and your family, where some other families, it's a very big deal. It just depends. Oh, Ellen, unmute yourself. Here, I'm going to unmute you or ask you to unmute.
Thank you. Yes. So, yeah, I'm listening. It's so interesting listening to all the stories. And I also think that boys, as a young person, I was always happy that I was a girl and I could wear longer hair, and so many people didn't even know anything about my ear. So I was born with a malformed ear, which was really just a piece of skin, basically. And I guess I never thought much about it. It was just, that was who I was. I was a very precocious child. And I grew up in the city, and I still remember, I think I was maybe 6 years old. And I remember the kids were playing, and they were playing pickup sticks. And I went over and I said, I want to play. Oh, no, you can't play. I said, well, I'll show you my ear. And they're like, okay. And, I remember my mother we lived on the 3rd floor, and I remember her out the window, Ellen, I think it's time for dinner or something. It was just funny, but I remember that. And I kind of used it as a tool, for me to be accepted when I felt I needed to be. But I have a lot of friends from way back, probably at least 20 or 30 friends that we all went to kindergarten and through school together. And a lot of them, sometimes they'll say to me, I didn't even know that you had this ear thing. So it's just interesting how it played out. But I never thought of it as anything bad or anything. I just never thought about it, and I guess I give a lot of credit to my parents for that in my family, because it just never was a thing. I did have 6 operations over 3 years. And again, I don't know, it was kind of, I was going in to have it done. I would get toys, I always looked at everything as just very positive. And then through the years, then it was, to me, it was just an ear, I never thought much about it. I feel like I hear 300% in my good ear, and in the ear with the Microtia, I do hear a little bit, I think, because I don't have an ear canal. So I must, hear some kind of sounds. Nobody ever really knew. I'm 70 years old. So back then, nobody knew anything about anything. And actually, it's very interesting to hear how, the hearing devices, because it was never, ever brought up to me that I should get a hearing device, which is, interesting. But I do hear, all my friends were all, 70, and everyone always laughs because they're like, Ellen, what did they say? We can't hear it. And I'm the one that hears everything. And they all have hearing aids and everything else. But anyway, I own a big travel agency. I'm very successful. I fly all over the world. I don't have any issues with flying, which is great, because I could have, because again, I don't have an ear canal in one ear. So, but fortunately, I don't have any issue with that. So I feel very, very blessed about that. So how I became into the Microtia family was my grandson, who's 6 years old, was born with Microtia, but in atresia. But he has an ear canal, a very tiny ear canal, and his ear is it's formed, but it's a little smaller. So it's a little different, but it just makes me believe that it's skipping a generation. But again, we don't really know if it's hereditary or it isn't or whatever. But But anyway, so for me, I don't think about my ear. You know what I mean? I just move along. And I did always use it as an advantage. And when you were talking about the fact that, like, if my husband's snoring, I could turn around and, put my ear on the pillow and not really hear, hear the noises. So I've used, to me, I've always like, oh, well, okay, this is great. I can just turn around and block out the noise. So.
Aw, thank you, Ellen.
Yeah.
Well, and, I wanted to share, I'd actually like to ask Alpesh a question. This is sort of coming up in the chat. And by the way, thank you everyone for chipping in to help answer the questions while the rest of us are talking. I appreciate that very much. Alpesh, so in our last session a couple weeks ago, the question came up where, of course, for the girls that have microtia and atresia, wanting to have kids someday and maybe worrying, can I pass microtia and atresia on to my children? If so, what will that be like? As a father for you, could you just share with us that you have 2 children and, maybe what your thoughts were as a male entering a relationship and thinking about the future?
That was my, I don't know, can you hear me? I'm not sure if my thing's on.
We can hear you,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so that was one of my biggest fears when my wife was pregnant. It's just natural thing. I was told that it doesn't pass on all that, but you just can't. When you're a father, about to become father, you just don't want them to have the same struggles, obviously, as a parent, right? So I was always worried that, okay, and my first child was born, was fine, no problem. My second child was born, had a floppy ear. So then that was all. His hearing was perfectly fine, but I was worried when he was born. But I found that was the biggest worry, that I wasn't sure what was going to happen, right? Before the child was born. But they're both fine, healthy, perfect hearing. But even if they did have the micro, I feel I'd be an expert to help them because having gone through it. So I wouldn't have been fearful even if they had it, but just you have the doubts, right? Same as parents that have kids with microtia, we all have the same doubts and how to help them, right? But yeah, both my children have perfectly good hearing, but I don't know. I've been told that it doesn't pass on. I've never been sure on this argument, to be honest, but.
Yeah, so even with our genetics research, even though we have more information today than we did yesterday, there's still a bit of randomization to microtia and atresia. And what I mean by that is we don't have enough information yet, and we hope to. With our research, we'll be able to go on and improve our statistics and find more information. But, what causes the right ear versus the left ear to be affected, and to what grade? And then throw in microsomia, craniofacial microsomia or hemifacial microsomia. Some individuals that have microtia and atresia just do not have that. It is just microtia and atresia. So there's all these variables, and it's going to take a while to figure all these answers out. But we're on the right track and we're very excited. Thank you, Alpesh. Steve,
No problem.
as another dad, and as, of course, a male, you have 3 children. Were you worried as well when you entered a relationship? Did you have conversations with your wife? Were you so worried that you maybe considered not having children? And maybe if you did, you'd be the role model. They would never be alone. I mean, what were these thoughts in your conversations?
Now that my kids are growing up and they can be big jerks sometimes, maybe at times I do wish I didn't have the kids. But no, I'm just kidding. I think my wife, she was probably more concerned and worried and wanted to get genetic testing and that kind of stuff done. It seemed like that was going to be an issue. I think like I said in the chat before, I didn't even know it was called Microtia until an ear community event. That's just how little doctors knew. And I grew up just playing sports. And so when my parents were like, yeah, I think we can look into surgery or something like that, I'm like, and take a summer off of sports? No way. And so, so that's kind of my mindset with it. And then when it came to having kids, like I didn't have like a bad experience growing up. So it wasn't like something I was like, okay, yeah, it's that bad. I fear that my kids are going to have it. I was like, if one of them has one ear, great. That'd be awesome. Then I'd have a little ear buddy. Um, but they, all of them have two ears and they're healthy. Um, and, and so it wasn't that much of an issue. I think my wife was probably just a little more concerned than I was, just because I lived with it my whole life. And I was like, I'm not normal. Like I'm a bit off, but
You're normal.
I'm fine. But yeah, so it wasn't a concern for me.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because again, and I'll ask Ellen this as well. I'll unmute you here, Ellen. But you know, girls sometimes think of things a little bit differently than the males. And you know, I try when families ask, you know, is it possible? Could I have another child that will be just like me? And maybe that individual had an awful experience at life, and they're at the point where they're scared to death. They don't want to have a child, and maybe that child could be even worse off. You know, we just don't know. I always try to say, you know, live the life you want, have all the children you want, and if something should happen that you have another child with microtia and atresia, what better role model? They'll never be alone. Like you said, Steve, you'll have another ear buddy. You know, I'm sad your kids are like picking on your ear, but anyways, you brought more to the conversation, you know, about your ear. But Ellen, as a female, as a mom, and you have your daughter, and then you have a grandson who ends up having a little ear, you know, what were some of the thoughts? Were you surprised thinking it showed up again?
Yeah, so what happened was, so my grandson was 3 months early. So our focus was, I mean, he was 3 pounds, you know, our focus was, oh my God, is he going to be okay? Which was all of our focus. And it wasn't until I think day 3 that he was born that I remember my daughter saying, you know, he has something with his ear. And, you know, it was kind of like, and he might have something with his ear. It wasn't, that was so not the focus because of him being, you know, a small, you know, being born early and us just making sure that he's going to live. That it just was not a focus at all. And interestingly enough, as time went on and he was doing well, and then we saw the ear even more. And it was, I think it's because my daughter saw how I went through life, and you know, the ear, it was just insignificant compared to what his problems could have been, you know. And that's what I said to her. I said, it's just an ear, you know. If he doesn't hear, if he has one ear or what. And she said, oh my, you know, I'm not even worried about it, because, you know, I see how, you know, how well you've done in life. So everyone is different, but it's proving to, of course, the thing with him now, he has a lot more. I mean, I had nothing, you know. I mean, as far as when I was in school, I mean, I was in the back of the room. Nobody like thought about the fact that I heard half of the things that I heard. And, you know, and it's not until later on in life that I actually looked back and thought, gee, I don't even know what I missed. But with him, you know, because he has, you know, all the advances of technology now, and has been wearing the Baha, and my daughter was so good about making sure he always, you know, wore it. He actually likes to wear it because he knows he hears better. And so it's such a non-issue for everyone, you know. It's just, he's as precocious as I was. So I think he's going to do very well. But we call it his special ear. You know, he'll say, you know, they notice that my granddaughter and grandson, they'll say, oh, you know, how come you don't have a hole in your ear? And then I say, well, my ear is special, and, you know, and I don't have a hole in it. And Bennett's ear is special. And that's just how it's always, you know, brought up about, you know, something about my special ear, but it's just not an issue. And he doesn't seem to have, you know, he's gone to preschool and now he's in kindergarten, and it just doesn't seem to be any conversation about it. So, but when I was pregnant with my 2 children, I do remember saying to the doctor the first time when I was pregnant with my daughter, I remember just saying, do you think that, maybe she might have an issue, with being born with, with an ear issue. And, back then, of course, they knew nothing, but they said, oh, no, it was just one of those things. That's how they said it. So, and that was it. I never really thought about it. It was probably the first thing I checked just because it would be a normal thing to do, but it wasn't anything that I really, was nervous or thought about. But again, just because to me, really, I always felt that I could have had so many worse things in life. And if this is the worst thing in life that I would, to me, it was like, how lucky am I, so.
Aw, thank you, Ellen. That's how we see it too. I think like when we first have our babies, we're very worried. It's an unknown. We don't understand, and we think we did it. And then as our kids go through life, we see how they grow and how they handle life. And that just makes things, so much easier. And, are we all symmetrical? No. People lose digits and ears throughout their life. Something creeps up, an accident, cancer, a motorcycle accident, so we're always having to adjust, but it's just such a shock originally because we worry about the health of our babies and did we do everything right? And, to just hear from individuals like each one of you on here today, I think tremendously helps our community. I hope that each and every one of you are proud of yourselves because, we all look at this differently, different perspectives, mom, dad perspective, the individual who has microtia and atresia, and then if it happens again in a family, just trying to figure it out and understand. And, thank you to each and every one of you. And, even before your community, of course, this was going on, we just needed help just a little bit more. And so I'm just grateful for each and every one of you. And I'm happy that we have something. There's not a day that goes by where I don't hear from somebody that says, I just found your website. Thank you. We were scared. We were worried. Or my uncle has this. Is this genetic? It's just a rare enough cause that we all are touched by that we still need just a little bit more information and we'll get there. But what we have so far is good. And it's always good to talk about it. I've talked with families where the parents, depending on the individuals they covered it up. Their children were raised to hide it. Don't talk about it. And it breaks my heart because nobody should go through that. But I guess that was, those families' way of dealing with it. I saw in the chat, for example, how do you talk to a toddler or explain to them when they start asking questions? They usually say the age of 3 is the age of discovery for ears. They start wondering, oh, that's weird. Everyone has 2 ears and I have 1. One of our favorite movies absolutely was Finding Nemo. We have plenty of stuffed Nemos. So you find ways to embrace it. You educate, you talk about it. I just want everyone to always talk about it. Don't ever not talk about it because that can have this very serious negative effect on the individual that has microtia and atresia. And like Ellen, like you said, no one thought twice about it. It was just something that happened and that helped you get through life. You're like, oh, well, I am fine. I guess I'm missing an ear.
Right.
So, yeah. So, it's all how it's handled. And, with the whole bullying stuff, kids are absolutely mean. And as we've clearly learned from this session, apparently the adults can be too. And the way they bring things up, question things or word things. But, we have to just find a way to find our inner self-confidence, or as parents, raise our children with confidence and just know that you are absolutely okay. You can go on to do anything you want in life. Sure, if you're not great at math or physics, you may not be a scientist, but I don't think that was because of your ear. So you just have to find your way. And anyone can be bullied or picked on or teased for anything. I mean, I remember growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money, but because of that, I didn't always have the brand name clothing. And everyone knew if you shopped at Walmart or Kmart. I mean, so it could be anything that you could be picked on. Maybe your nose is slightly crooked. Maybe you have 2 different colored eyes, or maybe you're just really skinny or really tall. It doesn't matter, you know, but I always say if Allie ever comes home from school one day where somebody said something and she was picked on, if it wasn't about her ear, we're going out to dinner, we're getting ice cream, and we're celebrating. Because as her parent, I worry the most about her ear and her hearing. But as you guys have shown us today, that it's not always about that. You just gotta, you know, find other things, embrace it, add some humor, and have that good circle of friends. So I just wanted to open it up to any last minute questions. So if you guys can click on the little raise your hand at the bottom of your screen, and I will do my best to call on you. And again, the individuals on today, you know, like Will and Kole, if you guys have questions too, I mean, you know, ask. I'll give you a couple minutes. Okay, well, it looks like there are no more questions. And I hope to see so many of you at our upcoming events. And thank you to those of you who've come to our past events. I'm happy that you found us. And always know that you are never alone with Microtia and atresia. If you didn't before, I hope you know now. And I think children and adults both who have Microtia and atresia are absolutely beautiful and perfect in every way. It's just the darn public struggle that puts us in situations that we have to try and figure out how to deal with. If everybody was forgiving and kind and understanding, I don't think anybody would care what anyone looked like. But unfortunately, that's not the real world, right? So, but again, thank you for your candidness and just speaking from your heart and sharing on our conversation today. I plan on having more sessions throughout the year, including those individuals who've chosen maybe a prosthetic ear. And, you know, just individuals that we can talk in different age groups, because as the generations go by, things are very different. You know, for like even what Ellen was saying, back then there were no school services, there wasn't extra help, you know, you just had to fend for yourself. But yeah, so I definitely plan on just opening this up to our community, and I hope to see you guys again. Thank you for all of your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Melissa. Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
everybody.